Afternoon, coaches. Welcome to the last locker room podcast of the season. We're here today, obviously, look at yesterday's All Ireland final. Daniel and Ryan back with us today. You're very welcome, lads. Good to see you. Lads, a wonderful occasion. I know, lads, you'd not like to hear this, but Jonesy in my corner here. Just stand outside the ground yesterday, and the atmosphere and the buzz around, and there is. I know this is the Nordy coming out and here, the Ulster, but when an Ulster team's involved, Ryan, it brings an unbelievable atmosphere. I have to say now, they felt a bit better atmosphere there yesterday than it has been for a number of years in the final. And I suppose it does help that Armagh's fans are absolutely fanatical. I got off the train last night in Dundalk, and I was driving down to Newry in the car, and the Carrickdale, oh my God, the motorway, there was cars lying abandoned, there was people just running up the sidewalks and everything to try and get into the Carrickdale. It was phenomenal. And I think that's one of the things, boys, yesterday I really took away from it. The atmosphere pre-game, the colour, there's no trouble, there's no bother. It's something special, Ryan, about our games, isn't it? It's just something special.
Yesterday, Stephen, it was a class occasion, and I think, as you said there, the Armagh ones, they'll say this themselves. They're a wee bit mad when it comes to football.
Yeah.
And look, they've had so many hard luck stories down through the years, but they're a bit like Mayo. They're fanatical in their support, and even if they're playing, I remember they came up to Brewster Park here to play Fermanagh in the first round, and they were there 2.5 hours before the game. They bring a great sense of community as well. And I felt there yesterday, the noise and the crack even outside the ground was fantastic. Great to see. And look, the hill to me seemed mostly Armagh. Now I know the Armagh stands out a bit more, but I was delighted for them because since 2002 there's been a lot of hard luck stories, and definitely when they got behind their team yesterday in that second half, it was phenomenal to be there and experience it.
Mm-hmm. Lads, I was actually on holidays last week, and I was actually in Switzerland for the week, and I went to a game last Sunday in Bern. It was the first game of the Swiss Premier League. Young boys were playing Sion, and there was a fan zone before the game, right? And there was a sort of a fan zone outside the stadium, and I thought to myself, there was music being played. There was little sort of beer carts, so you could get a couple of pints, and the sun was shining. Obviously, just sort of thinking to myself, in the GA, we could glamorize the games a bit more, from a fan perspective, with a bit of entertainment before the game and have your fan zones. I know it's maybe not the cultural done thing in Ireland, to have this, but it certainly gives you food for thought, Daniel.
Yeah, I wonder, is it maybe the infrastructure maybe not necessarily there more than I. No, look, you have on Clonliffe Road, you have a couple of options, but in general, I suppose Croke Park Hotel kind of fills that kind of void. If you get there 5 hours before an All Ireland final, you might get in.
If you can get into
If you
it,
get into it, and there is a cultural thing as well, though, and it's. I think that the fact it was the pairing, it was Galway and Armagh. I think it was really novel, and I said this after the semi-finals. It was a nice final to look forward to, especially from a neutral point of view. I thought it was a really good final to look forward to, and Armagh's second All Ireland in history. It's fairly incredible when you think about it, and how controlled they played given the occasion. I thought it was incredible. But look, I've enjoyed watching Armagh over the last number of years, and they've kind of gone from maybe 5 years ago. They've gone from that swashbuckling team who could score 320 but concede 320 as well. To being a completely reformed kind of animal, and to play an All Ireland final as controlled as they did, I thought was incredible. And given the hype, it'd be very easy for players to kind of lose themselves and get lost, because you could see, I was watching on TV, and you could feel the atmosphere through the TV. You could see the hill, you could see there was so much colour, so much noise. It must have been really hard as a player to be kind of removing yourself from that and sticking to the process. But a really good occasion for football, in the sense of having two new finalists, I think is brilliant.
Yeah, I've been up there, Ryan. I've been up around the Carrickdale a good bit recently. I remember there the pool up there and stuff, and you're just chatting to people, and you're driving through Killian and things like that, and you're just seeing the colour, as Led says. And every county's the same. Don't get me wrong, but the pressure, and I would say one of the biggest tasks that McGeeney probably had in the lead up to this final, Ryan, was sort of probably keeping the players away from that hype. Every person you spoke to, lads, you'd be sitting in the pool, you'd be in the steamer, just everyone, all they were talking about for the last 2 weeks was tickets, the match, tickets, we're going, who do you think, who do you fancy? And it was just relentless, and I would say, Ryan, a big fucking part of the psychology of the last 2 weeks for Armagh in particular has to be maybe just to distance the players from, look, this is what's important here, what's in this circle. We're preparing for this game. Forget about the outside noise, you know. And to be fair, there's been a lot of outside noise in a negative way for McGeeney over the last couple of years. Like, but this was a different type of outside noise where the pressure of, you know, of just wanting to win, needing to win, you know, the expectation of the supporters. That's a difficult job, Ryan, as a coach or a manager. Like, very difficult. Like.
Of course it is, Stephen. And naturally enough, players are going to get excited, and rightly so. You know, it's the biggest day of their sporting careers. But what I would say is, Kieran McGeeney's management team is very experienced. Like, obviously himself has played and won All Ireland. Conleth Gilligan has won All Ireland with Kilcoo, with Ballinderry, his own club. Kieran Donaghy's won All Irelands. You know, Kieran McKeever's played a lot of big games. So I've no doubt that
Kieran was involved in Cullyhanna this year. They won an All Ireland intermediate as well. You know,
exactly. So what McGeeney has is he's a lot of boys around him that are probably able to keep control and, you know, keep the focus. And I think that's very important, that the players enjoyed it, but it was clear to see. I think even I read somewhere where the Armagh released a statement saying, look, don't be annoying the players for tickets. Let them just focus now on the occasion and playing the game to the best of their ability in 2 weeks' time. So I felt that Armagh, definitely the players, they looked very focused, and they were definitely on a mission.
They have a lot of experience in their team too, Ryan. You know, the likes of Falker, Andrew Murnion, you know, Paddy Burns is in his early 30s, Rory Grugan, you know, they have a lot of experience, even the likes of Soup, even around the pan. Like those lads, I think Paddy Burns talked about it, you know, we've been soldiering here together as a group over the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And, you know, the Guinness that squad, but it was an interesting one there from Kieran McKeever last night. I seen on Instagram, I think it was, where he put up the tweet of the 6 lads who had come through the minors with him in 2016. And he says, you know, I told these boys, you know, we'll win in All Ireland because of what's happening above. We just need you coming through. And big part of Armagh's problem probably over the last number of years has been the limited underage success. But the environment, and we'll talk about it every week on this, like the environment that Daniel that McGeeney has put in, the high performance culture that he has created within that setup, like, you know, everybody there is adding value to that setup. Like, and it's so important when you're involved in a management team that it's not just a tick box. I'll take this man. I'll take this man. Like, everyone has to be adding some sort of value, don't they? Like,
yeah, and nothing kind of highlights that more than how important the bench has been this year. Like I know a lot of the time, sometimes the glib phrase is, oh, look, our finishers or our bench is important, but the bench genuinely was important, and different players coming up with different things. Like obviously Campbell has been massively influential for the most part. I thought outside of the goal yesterday, I thought he was a little bit iffy. But then you've Oisin O'Neill comes in, kicks a fucking monster score, like that ball through from Niall Grimley there on the counter attack. I mean, I thought he was phenomenal when he came in, and there's look, I think that's a real good example of how a happy panel exists, you know. And as I said earlier, he has changed over the course of his tenure. Like he hasn't just been plugging away with the one style of play for the last 10 years. He has evolved and he's looked at what's necessary to win and what's maybe you might want to play a particular style that mightn't suit what they have. And look, there's no two ways about it. Like they're a heavy counter-attacking team, you know, but that wasn't always the case with Armagh, let's say 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, you know, but they've learned. And you need, I think you talked about the underage success. If you don't have a constant flow of 3, 4 new players coming in every year, you have to make sure that you're keeping that group of 30, 35 lads together, keeping them happy, keeping them all focused that things are going in the right direction. Because it'd be so easy, I think, as a player, given how many failures they probably had, we call them failures over the years, but near misses, to kind of say, no, lads, look, it's not working. But they've persevered and persevered and persevered. And to be honest with you, you could only really be happy for them, given the amount of dramas they've had and like the penalty shootouts and the near misses. You know, I think the whole win for Armagh was a win for teamwork, and I don't want that to sound too kind of, you know, too kind of cheesy, but like you couldn't really even pick out a player that won them the game yesterday. It was a pure and utter team performance. Every man performing his little role, not worried about anything else. And I think that's just been highlighted throughout the year with the value of the bench, that every person within that, whatever they have, 40 players, has some part to play in that squad.
Yeah, thought yesterday, Ryan, like, you know, we'll sort of talk about the game a bit more, and then we'll go back to maybe, you know, looking at the year gone by and who your standout players were in that. But at the game itself, it was very clear from the throw in, you know, the matchups were intriguing at the very start. You know, obviously McCambridge went on to Shane Walsh. I thought obviously Shane Walsh just didn't, it just wasn't his day. You know, we think back to the last All Ireland final that Shane Walsh was involved in. I think he kicked 10 points. I think it was a shootout between him and Clifford, 2 years ago. So like, it just goes to show you what the pressure of a final can do. I don't think Shane Walsh is fit. I don't think he has been fit. I think he's been carrying an injury, Ryan. But you had Aidan Faulkner obviously went on to Comer. Paddy Burns had initially picked up Rob Finnerty, and then when Finnerty went off, it was a massive blow for Galway. What tended to happen then was that the matchups outside of McCambridge, were a little bit more flexible. But there was also an interesting thing where the Armagh nearly had the +1, but it was a rotational +1. It wasn't like just Aaron McKay permanently. It was varied. It was obviously manufactured, but they had a really, really well organised, structured defence around as well in that first half, and they were not going to allow Galway like any space whatsoever inside that 45. And you could see very clearly from when the ball was thrown in how Armagh were going to set, how they were going to play, and it obviously led Ryan to probably a KJ Fair. But from a game's perspective, it probably was a disappointing game. But it's a final that neither team really wanted to lose, and it was just win at all costs. And like Armagh not caring now how they won. But how did you see the game, Ryan, in general? Like,
Yeah, I think Armagh, as you said, Stephen, were very flexible in their defensive shape. And what happens is because they don't man mark so many players, it means then that they don't lose their shape very often. Because if you're man marking too many players, you can be dragged all around the place. And what I would have even seen yesterday at times was, Rian O'Neill, that maybe isn't your best defender, but there would have been times he was picking up, let's say, a Comer on the wing, just naturally wherever he ended up being, and Comer ended up, I suppose, coming into that area. That was his man until the play went dead. So I feel Armagh were very good all year. We've talked a lot about them, not conceding goals, and I felt that was their big emphasis this year, was that they were going to be so structured defensively. Barry McCambridge, they found an unbelievable man marker. Like, he has done phenomenal jobs, I think, on Shane McGuigan. He picked up, obviously, Clifford the last day, and he picked up Walsh yesterday, and he was excellent. Like, Barry McCambridge will probably get an all-star, I think. But everybody else, again, and I think they mentioned Kieran McKeever in this, everybody else I felt was good in their positioning sense. They were able to, I suppose, track runners. They were able to get tackles on without fouling. I'm thinking of Ben Creeley's one at the very end, like a big lad, 6'4", 6'5", 74 minutes gone, and he was still able to, tackle Killian McDade cleanly and get a turnover. And I think that has been a massive part of Armagh's game, their discipline in defending. We've always talked about their flair players and the likes of Soupy Campbell and these boys coming off the bench to be their finishers, but I think we have to give a lot of credit to them defensively. The game at the moment, Stephen, I suppose, and yesterday followed through with that, was a lot of it's based on how good are you at breaking down the opposition inside the 45, and then without the ball, how good are you at defending inside the 45? Because most teams get 14 back, and then most teams end up attacking with everybody going forward. So I felt Armagh probably just had a wee edge in Galway yesterday. I felt Galway, at times, they marked narrow, which allowed the likes of Oisín Conady and Soupy Campbell and these boys to get in down the wings and get cutting in with their pace. But all in all, it was a great game. It was enthralling. You didn't know what way it was going to go. But I suppose the Dublins and the Kerry finals, there's probably been better shootouts, but still you couldn't take your eyes off it.
Yeah, and Legend, I think one of the things Armagh obviously identified was Conor Gleeson. Like, they went after him hard, on different occasions. Like, not all the time, but on different occasions they went after him hard. And I noticed actually even just in the pre-match, when they broke away for the pre-match parade or whatever, and they were lining out, there was 3 or 4 Armagh players really, really hammered into Gleeson, like, on the way up the field. Gleeson was running up the field and he was hit 3 or 4 times. And there's no question about it, lads, that they would identify Conor Gleeson maybe as a possible, weakness in the Galway armour. We've talked about Gleeson before. He's a brilliant goalkeeper, like, but it's like all goalkeepers, like, I don't think he's overly comfortable just going short and finding those little pockets of space. And I think that Armagh probably identified that and realised, what, we'll go after this. And they did get joy at times. But I think, lads, as well, what Ryan talked about there, the both teams were very, very similar in how they set up. Like, we know how well organised Galway were all year as well, but probably just for me, Armagh just seemed to have a few more little attacking options. Obviously, the ball in the air was a set play, and you could see very clearly then it was nearly like a bunch and like a spine of players down the middle of the forward line, and they were looking for like a mark or trying to originate someone to come out of that and pop pass. Then you had the call where they waved everyone over to one side of the field, and they tried to isolate Conor Turbot on the one side 1v1. Kerry last week left them 1v1, but Galway had obviously identified that set play and they had the cover in. So I think Kieran Donaghy's influence there, Ledge, obviously from an attacking point of view of setting up basketball type plays, that's the way the game has gone, I suppose, and there's different structure attack. But I just thought Armagh just had that wee bit more flexibility, Ledge, in their forward play,
Yeah, and to be fair to them, I think they limited Galway so much that it didn't allow Galway to have that flexibility. I mean, like in the first half there was never really. I think there was one kick pass went into Comer in the corner, and it was a 2v1, and he had to throw the ball over his head, and it was a free out. So like Galway wanted to play through that pivot where they possibly could, but Armagh gave them just no oxygen to do that, and Galway were forced to kick from distance. And look, we're look, you've asked about like the game in general, and look, we're not here to be cheerleaders one way or the other for. We're just talking about what we see. But just from the coaching element of it, like I thought the first score from Conroy, even though people might say, it was a long, boring period of possession, that takes a huge amount of work when you've got 15 men behind the ball to pick the right moment, to shoot on the run under pressure. Like Conroy kicked some absolute corkers there, like phenomenal scores. Yeah. And look, I appreciate, as you said, it mightn't have been what we traditionally people like to see, but like I thought the way Galway played in the first half, they had to work so hard for their scores. Armagh probably didn't have to work as hard. Like Armagh's phases were probably maybe a quarter of the time that Galway's were, especially in that first half. And look, maybe that's due to, as you say, when Armagh attack with full 15 was not being fully fit, Comer trying to stay up the field a little bit more. There's a small bit more gaps for the Armagh forwards. I felt that probably weren't there for Galway, but it was. Yeah, look, and it's funny, even talking about set plays, it's mad. Nothing really ever came off them as such. Like, nothing happened, really. But it was just posing questions, and I think this All-Ireland was a win for coaching. I think it was a win for systems. It was a win for organisation, to be perfectly honest, because you have to consider where that Armagh team were coming from. And, like, I think it's really impressive for them to be able to be so controlled in an All-Ireland final when their emotions must have been like that's the first All-Ireland final for a lot of those lads. It is the first All-Ireland final for that group of players in Armagh, and for not one of them to really miss a beat, I think is phenomenal, And look, reality here, Shane Walsh misses 2 frees in the first half, hits one off his left from the top of the D. He probably just should have chipped with his right. He misses one on the far side, a bit trickier, fair enough. Missed the mark, missed another free. This could have been a different conversation at the same time if Walsh had his shooting boots on, So, look, there's very little between these teams. There's absolutely nothing between these teams. But I will say, I thought
we were talking as well yesterday. We were talking as well yesterday, Ryan. This is one for both of you here. Like, McGeeney has been so unlucky as a manager at times. They think of the penalty shootouts, the near misses and stuff. But like you talk about that, even that shot at the end. Was it Liam Silk? Who took the shot on at the end for Galway?
Conroy got blocked.
Well, Conroy got blocked. But remember the one before it where it just hits the post.
Oh, Dylan McHugh.
You're talking Dylan McHugh. You're talking about 6 inches. And you're talking about 3 inches. So 3 inches this way. That goes over. Galway with the momentum. Game goes to extra time. Who knows what happens? And it's small margins. Like, look, Rob Finnerty. Probably for me, Rob Finnerty has been easily one of the best forwards in the country this year. He's shooting the lights out. He starts off, nails his first free, and then his knee goes. I think he was due an operation anyway, so he's probably playing through a bit of pain. But his knee goes, he goes off. Galway lose a massive scoring threat. Their captain, Sean Kelly, lined out to start, doesn't make the game. All of a sudden, there's a little bit of readjustment in their team. Like, these are all small wee things, lads. But luck, lads, plays a massive part in it. Like, massive part in it.
I think, Stephen, at that level, it's a small percentages. Like, there's nothing else in it. And I think that's probably what Armagh, that has been their thinking, is that surely the luck will switch. And we will, our chance will come. Like, they have been on the wrong side of so many small margins of between winning and losing or going to penalties or whatever else. And they just kept at it. And if you think about it, we talk about Armagh's underage maybe not being the strongest, but Armagh are nearly like a club team. A club team keeps their core players together. They'll play 14, 15 years for their club, and then they'll add a sprinkle of underage players to come through every year. Like, the dominant teams in the county don't necessarily have to be the dominant underage. All they need is 2 or 3 coming through. Armagh, what they've been able to do is keep all those main players, Soupy Campbell, Grugan, Falker, there's Murnan. All them boys have been around now for a long time, and then they've been able to just add the couple of players that you talk about, the Kieran McKeever, maybe coach, the likes of Oisin Conady coming in first year, Barry McCambridge. And eventually, if they've kept everyone together, sticking to the one plan of trying to reach an Ulster title and win it, or try and reach an All-Ireland and win it, you will get your luck. And yesterday was their time, and I was delighted for them, because you have to give them massive credit for the resilience that they've shown down through the years to keep coming back.
And like, lads, you look at the team as well. Like Ryan talked about certain players there. Like think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was actually at the game yesterday, and Kevin McClory, so Kevy's Mayor Bridgeman, and Kevy was saying when McKeever was managing them about 4 or 5 years ago, club team, and he was involved in Armagh at the time as well, and they played Armagh subs in Callan Bridge. And so it was, the lads that didn't get football or whatever at the weekend, and they wanted a challenge game, and they went down to Callan Bridge and played them, just to give the subs a game. And like Kevin was going through the list, and like there was 7 or 8 of those lads playing that day who were a million miles away from an Armagh jersey, who were actually playing yesterday. And it goes to show you as well the perseverance of having a collective squad, of having a squad that is unite. A consistency in your squad as well. And it's very, very, it's probably very hard at county level to do that, lads, to keep up because of the commitment levels. Like you said before, that COVID probably realigned a lot of players, sort of thinking of their commitment and stuff like that. Like, but it does go to show you, and certainly, surely a lot of the coaches that are watching this, even from a club perspective, if you have a group of players and they just believe in what you're doing, they stick to the process, they really just pile their lives and souls into it. Like, who knows where it could take you,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like we played that Armagh team a good bit, Stevie, with Carlo over the years in challenge games and bits and pieces, where they mightn't have been playing full teams, but similar. Yeah. But you're still talking about the majority of those lads would have been playing yesterday, huge amount of them, and it's so funny to see even the transition from let's say a Carlo team to the Armagh team in that 7 or 8 years. Jesus Christ, there's a whole new 15 in Carlo, but you practically got every one of those Armagh lads still bursting away, like. And as I said, it's a phenomenal thing to be able to do. It really is, and it probably shows you. I don't think you do that if players aren't bought into you as a person, as a management team, and as individuals. And like Donaghy looks like he's a really good players man. I know McKeever will probably be similar, and the respect that all the players have spoken about Kieran McGeeney after the game, before the game, even when things weren't going well, they always had the height of respect for him. And mad to think, the club's trying to get rid of him last year. Like it's a phenomenal 2 fingers to them now, But
well, the other thing, Ledge, as well, you don't really see too many. You hear this all the time. Oh, he's walked away from the panel. He's left the panel. He stepped away. You see high-profile players stepping away all over the country. You see players going travel. Like there's very few. I know Jordy Oakes stepped away at the start of the year, but he wasn't long going back. And I'm sure he is glad he made that U-turn now. Like because he had a great impact, and he's been a brilliant impact, actually, brilliant impact player. And even yesterday, he set up a score for us. Neil, sub to sub, finisher to finisher, whatever you want to call it. Like, but it does go to show you a bit of harmony, and it does go to show you that they're united as well. Like, but listen, Oisín Connolly, another lad who's just burst onto the scene this year. You've Cian McConville sitting not even stripped out, who, if you chatting to Armagh people on the way home yesterday, probably one of the top scorers in the Armagh club leagues from Crossmaglen. Can't get a jersey. But he's still there, and he's probably still providing a high level of quality of training. For a Paddy Burns to pick him up is obviously testing Paddy Burns, and that's obviously huge, Ledge, huge.
Massive. And I actually saw Cian McConville running on. I always be curious at the end of at the final whistle, what do the non-tugged out members? What's their celebrations like? Because
Jamar Hall, who's big, massive part of it over the last 5 or 6 years, like no jersey, like
like it's incredible, like, and it is, It's just a testament to McGeeney, I think, that he's been able to create that environment. Really interesting to see what he does now, actually, what he does next. I mean, has he reached the peak? Is there another couple of years in him? Will he evolve that team now? It'll be interesting. But what I will say is the quality in training week on week, like if you're having to dig into that panel on a regular basis, and if they're not up to a standard, it's very hard to maintain the kind of consistency we're talking about, the consistency of performance. Like Armagh have been knocking on the door here for 5-6 years now at this stage, religiously knocking on doors. And I think one thing that's probably overlooked is, I think, the level of conditioning to play the way they play. Like, we talk an awful lot about how hard it is to play in Croke Park with no one up. And in fairness, Armagh play no one up, but they're so fast to get players high. Like there was a bit of analysis before the match. Mossy Shea did it about Barry McCambridge, or maybe it's Canavan, and it was about Barry McCambridge and how fast he was getting from his 45 doing a man marking role to the opposite 45 setting up scores. And like the level of conditioning that takes is phenomenal, and that probably does take 5, 6, 7 years consistency to get to that point. Because if you're, let's say, like a Galway who leave 2 or 3 men up, you're not consistently making that 130 meter run as a wave, whereas Armagh are consistently doing that up and down the field. Like, it's a phenomenal level of conditioning, and it probably took a lot of time to get that squad to that point. But I would imagine there was a big vision here from McGeeney that was set out to this group of players and said, "This is the plan. Stay with me. This could take time, but we'll get there eventually." And look, that's what it looks like from the outside anyway. And you know, I'd be happy for him, like, because he's taken some amount of stick between getting the boot
Well,
out of Kildare after
I'll ask
bringing
you,
them from nowhere.
I'll ask this, Ryan. It's a fair point. Like, I'll ask this, Ryan, though, like from your point of view, like you're Fermanagh, you've soldiered for Fermanagh for many years. Both of you actually very, very similar in that you played for your counties for a long time, good servants. But unfortunately for you guys, you know, your county wasn't blessed with 40-man panels. Like, you know, you weren't blessed with getting away on, you know, week-long holidays to Portugal or training camps and stuff like that. And I suppose from a county's perspective, Ryan, like your own county and Ledge yourself as well, like it's very difficult to get a group of players, Ryan, 34, 35 players to stay committed and focused for a long period of time. Like, and it does, I think the big sell for me is getting the right people in the right places. Like, and I think that, you know, I remember someone saying to me, like, that management team wouldn't really whet your appetite. You know, they were talking about different management team stuff. And then you hear a management team and you go, oh, you know, yeah, you know what, that would whet my appetite. And I suppose as a player, Ryan, how important is that, you know, as a player that you know, because Donegal are a prime example, you know, of a group of players who obviously Paddy Carr was appointed, probably few players probably had lingering doubts, etc., you know, and few decided to walk away, a few decided not to really probably commit. And then all of a sudden McGuinness comes in and it's like, oh, you know, this is exciting. Like, and you know yourself, Ryan, it must be difficult, like, you know.
Yeah, well, look, Stephen, there's no doubt county football, you know, it's a massive commitment for players and management. And I think Armagh are a great example for it. You know, we're talking here from Anna, Carlo, obviously for Dan, but it was 2018 we played Armagh first round of the championship and beat them. They were also in Division 3. We played them in a league final. That's only, what, 6 years later, now that they're the All-Ireland champions. And it's a lot of the same players that were involved. So it would give massive hope for players that are playing for, you know, lesser counties. And I think the template here is, I know this is a coaching podcast, but if you look at Armagh, they have kept the core squad together. Their conditional levels were off the charts. So obviously, if you're sticking to a county squad and you're doing the right things year after year, eventually your conditioning will get to a level that's required to compete. Like I felt yesterday, that was a massive. We talked about Armagh's tactics and Donaghy bringing in set players, but I felt the conditioning of the Armagh team was a big factor in that game. Walsh didn't look match fit. Obviously, Comer wasn't match fit. Rob Finnerty, well, I think, was carrying an injury all year anyway.
Yeah.
Sean Kelly was injured. On the Armagh side of things, they were all ready to go. And I think that a lot of credit has to go to Julie Davis, who I believe is the S&C coach for Armagh. But also them players, it's no coincidence that they're in the shape that they're in, because them players have been around a setup for a long number of years. What I would also say is you have to have total belief in the manager. And you can clearly see that, even though it hasn't went their way, Armagh players have full belief in McGeaney. They backed him even when the clubs tried to come in and change it up a bit last year.
Yeah.
And McGeaney then, as a result, he has brought an unbelievable backroom team beside him. Like
even the medical team, Ryan, like I know he'll be delighted I mentioned him here, like, but Anthony Fern would listen to us regularly. Anthony's a member of the Daily Sports group, you know, and Anthony is you know one of the physios along with Kieran's wife, Hank Mora, and you know Anthony for me is easily the physios that I've come across, like even Ben in our time, Ledge, like, you know, like Ben Doyle, like Ben and Anthony be very similar. Like I rate Anthony as one of the best I've ever come across, you know, and to have that level of experience everywhere, right? You know, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. Like, you know,
that's it, Stephen. I think players are quick to realize if there's bluffers part of a setup that are maybe just there for their own reasons. Like, you know, you cannot question Kieran McKeever. Conleth Gilligan has an unbelievable reputation. He came in obviously to add a wee sprinkle of stardust here and there. And obviously then, you know, you've Donaghy, who's been there and done it, travelling up and down from Kerry. So I think players, they need to have full belief in what's in front of them as well, if you want them to put all in it for a long number of years. And I think Armagh have those, they have the right things in place. They've great sponsorship. McGeaney, I think, does a lot of work behind the scenes himself, getting funding, because at the end of the day, boys, you still need money to get the best structures in place.
Yeah, and Ledge, like the minors this year got the All-Ireland final, and obviously Aidan O'Rourke was in charge of that minor team. You know, Aidan's a very experienced coach. He's head of sport in Queen's University as well. Like, he knows the game, he understands the game. You know, he's another man who's going to put in a really good, you know, environment there. And they were actually using our school as a training base for most of the winter. And I would have been privy to a lot of the sessions that we're at. You know, this is the minor team, like, and again, like, just very, very really copycat like from the seniors with the environment they have, you know, and the professionalism behind it. Like, I don't know it's only minor foot, but it's schooling those boys for what's coming next, you know, and it's suppose for any county, like, and even a club team as well, Daniel, like from a coaching perspective, like it's so important to have the right men in the right places. Like it really is. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
and you look at Horst Evelyn going into Loud now. I mean, I think that's a massively positive
massive,
move for, yeah, like move
massive.
for Loud, like really and
Yeah.
truly, like, and it's not that we're saying we want players to be programmed or anything like that, but it's getting them like principles of play. I think
Yeah.
every team has a principle of play, and probably those
Mm.
principles don't change a whole lot, but it's getting them into the environment of how to execute in different scenarios and kind of decision making and all that sort of stuff. And like I think the idea of that is to stop this, let's say, wait for a team. So let's say McGeeney's team was 5, 6, 7, 8 years before they really started getting after it. What you'd imagine for your underage development, if they have a lot of that base already built up, then that's happening much faster rather than having the big gap between good teams. It's much more fluid than when, as you say, if you Aidan O'Rourke's training that a minor team in 3 or 4 years' time, all those boys already have the basics. They'll probably have a really good level of strength and conditioning, and they're coming into a team that's now successful. And that success will continue to breed success. And you don't need the big long gap of probably, like, I've no doubt that it was a really dark first couple of years under McGeady getting to that stage. Like I often talk about today, we played him across Midland and we were on the main pitch and there was, I think, Stephen Campbell and there was a load of fairly big names down the far pitch getting fucking flogged with the GPS on them. Like, so I'd say
Sure.
there was a lot,
Yeah.
there's a lot of grunt work I'd say I had to go in. But I think for, like, obviously a lot of clubs can't afford it. Maybe your bigger clubs with a lot of cash probably can, but to have that consistency of coaching where coaches are all like have the same values and have the same principles from underage up, I think that is critical to then your senior team being much more fluid and less emphasis then on the big manager. It's more of a, like, you look at Kilmacud Crokes, for example, like they have something like that in place. And then, like, you talk to Robbie Brennan, he'll tell you himself, well, I'm just getting fully formed players coming out of minor that all
Yeah.
know what they're doing. And that makes a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, massive difference. And Ryan, obviously, we talked about the money side of things, like well documented, like that Armagh would spend a lot of time on the road, Johnson House, Carton House, and stuff like that. Like, like it's a massive advantage. Like when you have that backing and you have that support financially, like it makes some difference, Ryan, because the work that you can get, and I don't think coaches probably realize, maybe some coaches that have been there and have been involved will realize that you two men have been involved. You understand what I'm talking about here. To take a team away for 2 nights, you get so much done. There's the collective nature of the group being together, Ryan. You're having breakfast together, you're lunching together, you're dinner together. It's not a session on the pints, but I'm sure there's a bit of social time at different times when appropriate. But you can get a session done in the morning. You can get a video session done. There's no rushing about. You can get another pitch session done in the afternoon, walkthroughs. You can have a meeting that night or a quiz or something socially as a group. The next day you're doing the same thing again, and like Ryan, those training weekends are absolutely priceless for any group, like, aren't they really? Like,
Ah, they are, Stephen. As you listed out there, like you get so much covered, and it feels like you've got a lot more time. Like when
mm,
you're doing a training session and even you only maybe have an hour and a half on the pitch, and you're trying to cover so many things. And if you go after too many things, then you lose the session. While a training weekend, like you can just tick the boxes and get
yeah,
everything covered. What I would also say is you have to remember there's a lot of different personalities. There's a lot of strong characters. Club football, boys coming up against each other, maybe battling it out in finals, and I feel a team bonding weekend brings lads together.
yeah,
You get to learn more about the teammate beside you, what their, off the pitch life is like, things like that. And I feel Armagh were like, they were definitely like a brotherhood is how I would describe them. And they talk about that a lot themselves in interviews where they've been sojourning together. They've had the defeats, they've had the hard looks, but they lift the man up beside them and they say, look, we're still on this mission and no man's going to fall off. Like Stephen Sheridan, I think I heard Kieran McGeeney mention, he probably has came to the end of his playing career, but they took him straight into the management side of things. So
so,
they don't lose players. I talked about Kieran, is it Mark Shields, sorry, being around the setup.
yeah,
Your guy O'Hanlon as well. So
mm,
special group, that Armagh team, I would say that. And they need a special man leading them. And McGeeney has obviously been able to galvanise the whole thing. And yeah, team bonding weekends, that is where you will bring a group together.
it's interesting there, lads. Ryan talks about the contact time with players. Like, you're a club manager, obviously, at the minute, and the same as myself. Like, and you're trying to, you're nearly, you just want to do everything, and you want to try and squeeze everything in, and it's so difficult. And as Ryan says, there has to be a focus. And I suppose as a coach, that's one of the biggest challenges, lads, is actually trying to it's trying to just fit everything in, and it's very difficult because your contact time, obviously at club level, because a lot of our coaches in the forum here are club coaches, like, and your contact time is probably 3 times a week max. Like, if you go four, it's a big ask to have players out of the house 4 nights a week for a club team, but
Yeah.
sometimes it has to take that extra night, like sometimes you need that extra morning or that extra day just to do walkthroughs or whatever it happens to be. But it's very clear that Armagh were very, very well coached, like, and that's the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think speaking of bonding weekends, you remember that one down at Johnston House, and we went up on the Friday night, and I think we had a bit of a tactical walkthrough. We actually we played Monaghan in qualifier 2017. We had a look at that the night before.
Yeah.
We did a light walkthrough that morning. We played Antrim at 1 o'clock. I think the game had to be abandoned at 1:45. We had
You boys were using Italian language to the Nordies.
yeah,
That's what happened. You see,
there was
I didn't know
chaos.
what to do. I didn't know what to do, Ryan. I was sort of stuck in between, way back in the north. I was like, well, I'm sort of coaching is like,
You were afraid of who was on the Antrim line, I think. But that was brilliant. Like, so you got your kind of tactical work done. You got your review the year before. We got our challenge game played. We did a bit of recovery. We had a look at the game afterwards, a bit of food. And I remember you did get to know, was it a players round? We did a quiz, and there was a players round. Now I got to know more things than I probably wanted to know. But couple of points that night with the Antrim boys as well. But
That's
you know
right.
what?
That's right.
I remember that vividly still, because I felt that was pivotal in our year being progressive. I thought it was critical.
It's
And
2 weeks before the National League started, and you get so much done over that weekend. Like,
huge amount. A really good crack. Like,
and
and look,
brought the group together, Ledge, as well.
absolutely. But and then you go to the other side of it then, where you get brought away for a camp and you get the shit run out of you. You barely touch a football, and you're like, well, why we could have done this at home in our centre of excellence? Why are we get paid to go away? So there's a fine line. I think you have to use that time wisely. If players see, like as you said, like Armagh are down to Johnson House probably before every game in Croke Park, that can become tedious if that doesn't start to be functional. I think players start to say, "Oh, I need this now. Before I need to be down there the Friday night before the Saturday, because I want to be in my team environment. I want to have my meal with the boys. I want to have our video work done that night." Players get comfortable with that. Like, I remember when we were when we were in the league in 2017, 2018, and you started to bring us together, and we had food as a group before home matches, and we used to do our video analysis there as well. I became very reliant on that, because I was like, I love that. I love that structure. I love the having the video stuff fresh in your head going to a game. Whereas if that was a different scenario and someone was just bringing you together and you were just sitting down and not that time wasn't being utilized, I'd be saying, lads, I could be at home here relaxing instead of being sitting here doing nothing. So
But those
it's a very fine balance.
those 3 hours what we're talking about, because you would meet, you would have your food first. That was your social time for 20 minutes, half hour. Then you would do the video work, bit of tactical stuff. And then you would have another 15, 20 minutes to say, as maybe the rugby was on at lunchtime or something, and you boys would sit and watch 20 minutes of that. But it's just more contact time, isn't it? It's just having that contact time as a group. And Ryan, that's important to have that contact time. Like, and I don't think maybe coaches and maybe teams underestimate that actual contact time. Enjoying each other's company, being together as a group. Like, I just think it's so important, right?
Oh, it is, of course, and you're just relaxing with your lads that you're going to go to war with, maybe in the next round of the championship or whatever. And I feel like it definitely is very important. And if you look at any of the top teams, I know even Mayo there, if they've got an away game in the league, they maybe come up the night before, travel up on a Friday, stay over Friday night, as you said, go through a lot of them things on the Saturday, go and play the league game on a Saturday night, and sometimes even stay over a Saturday night, get back down the road on the Sunday. But Stephen, it's contact time. And the big thing here, I know I've said this a few times though, Armagh have kept their squad together. So them boys' contact time has been a lot more than a lot of other clubs. And what I'm saying is McGeaney, he doesn't have to start showing things to new players, because the boys have already, they've been there. He's ticked the box. He's went through it with them, the previous year. The same players come back the following year. So it's like he doesn't have to go back to square one again. And I feel that's the massive thing from a coach's point of view. Can you get players that are willing to buy in and they're not just in and out,
Yeah, it's true. Lads, look, it's been a brilliant year, on the podcast. Obviously, really enjoyed the crack, really enjoyed the banter. We're supposed to finish off. Obviously, we'll just take a quick look back at some of the standout performers. Goalkeeping wise, lads, Blaine Hughes, I know Blaine actually is a really, really good character. Again, Blaine was a man who probably left the panel because he wasn't getting the chance of, Ethan Rafferty, and now there he is, like, probably in line for an All-Star. You know, well, he's going to be an All-Star nomination at least. You know, so it's an interesting one. But Blaine Hughes obviously has been brilliant. Standout keeper for you, Ryan.
Yeah, I think Blaine Hughes. I think Niall Morgan had a good campaign, but
Yeah.
obviously Tyrone weren't in the final stages. So I would go Blaine Hughes myself.
Yeah, and Ledge, I think we might have lost him, did we? We lost him for a minute there, have we? Going to the full back line, obviously, Ryan, I know obviously the likes of Armagh are obviously going to dominate, the team of the year. Not going to go through a full team, but I thought Paddy Burns had a really good season, Ryan. Really good season. I think he's had a great season. Johnny McGrath, another man who's had a great year as well. Any fullbacks for you that have been standout, like?
I felt Barry McCambridge, Stephen, was the standout.
Yeah.
I didn't feel there was any forward that got the better of him when he was given a man marking job. I also thought Brendan McCole of Donegal picked
I
up
was
a
just
lot
going
of
to say that actually, Brendan McCole had a great year, yeah.
picked up a lot of key men, and I felt he was the mainstay in that Donegal defence, in the full back line. If you're moving then through to the half back line, your own club man there is a Craig Lennon. I thought from Louth, like he just because Louth maybe didn't make it to the semi final, but I thought he was outstanding in the run. So there was a lot of players that played for lesser counties that maybe don't get enough recognition.
I was just going to say that because last night I know that the Sunday game did the sort of the team of the year, and it's a bit fabricated because again it's only it's barstool talk really. Like we're only making an opinion on something. Like Led said it at the start as well. Like you're only having an opinion on it's not right or wrong. Like, but there probably should be a bit more of flexibility. There probably should be a wee bit more flexibility in the selection, as you say, Ryan. Like Armagh are well worthy of having 5, 6, 7, 8 or whatever in the team. Like, but it would be nice if smaller counties, were recognised. Like even particularly if you got to a quarter final, and there had to be at least one player from each team in the quarter final to be in the team of the year. It'd be an interesting one. Like, but from a midfield perspective, like Grimley and Creaney, like they were immense all year. Like Paul Conroy actually was on the plane coming home from holidays on Saturday, and I actually sitting beside a fella from Galway, and as it turned out, he would have played midfield with Conroy at the club, James Stevens' club, Conroy's club, like, and he said like he's just such a fucking lovely fella as well, like, and he's a Rolls Royce of a player, and I suppose it's disappointing, lads. We probably haven't really talked much about Galway lads, like it's disappointing for those lads too, the likes of Conroy, like who probably doesn't have many years left, like, there's plenty of miles on the clock that he doesn't get over the line, like, but such is football. But lads, we're just talking there before we lost you, like about sort of standout performances. We're just going through, like, any defenders stand out for you this year, lads? Ryan's talked about Craig Lennon, he's talked about Barry McCambridge, any other defenders? Dylan McHugh, great season.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to go with. He kind of sometimes, until you see him in the flesh playing, he kind of might go unnoticed, but I think he's had a phenomenal run into the championship. I think he's been really, really good. And look, I thought he was man of the match in that Dublin game by a distance. He was absolutely phenomenal, and I feel for him yesterday, as we talked about the width of a post from being the hero to getting him extra time. I think Dylan McHugh has been sensational. And look, you've mentioned two lads already. I think Craig Lennon is yes as well. I mean, he has some highlights reel this year, and McCambridge has been another planet. I thought just kind of a left field one. I thought Brian Stack was excellent as well in a team that wasn't exactly flying. I thought Brian Stack was really good.
Good season with his club. Good season with his club as well, beating an All-Ireland club final.
Yeah, fine footballer. Like, so they'd probably be my standouts.
Yeah, and I know Peter Mogan got a mention last night in the Sunday game, Ryan. Another really good year for Donegal as well. Like, obviously don't forget that Donegal were with of a post away from being in an All Ireland final as well. Obviously, and sloppy goal they conceded against Galway, like, and the Ulster champions as well, which is not easy. Like, so obviously worthy mentions there for them. Forward line lads, forward wise, like I think John Maher's an excellent footballer, really, really top performer. I think he's pivotal to Galway. I think, obviously standout performance from him. For me, Rob Finnerty, I'm a big Rob Finnerty fan. I think probably the find of the championship is definitely Oisin Connolly. There's no question about it. And Turbo's had his moments as well. Like, but anybody's for you?
I thought Cian Darcy had a very good game there yesterday as well, Stephen, and I think he's played very well for them all year. A bit like John Maher, probably doesn't get enough attention because you're looking always at the Comers and the Walshes. I thought Oisin Gallen really carried that front line of Donegal's. Like he stood out. I suppose we've mentioned Michael Murphy stepping away and who would be the next man to carry it. Paddy McBurdy's obviously coming to the end of his career, but I thought he was outstanding. Outside of that, I thought Tommy Durnion in the middle of the pitch deserves recognition. Like he had a fun game even against Donegal. He made a kick 4 points from play.
Brilliant game.
Yeah. There was guys that got two.
Yeah, and Ledge, Ryan talked about Oisin Callender, another man who obviously will be haunted until the next season starts with, the free kick that he missed. Like, it just goes to show you the pressure on a free taker too. Like free takers, you talk about those clutch moments, you talk about your Oshie McCombels, of days gone by, like, and it just goes to show you the real importance. Like, Shane Walsh unfortunately had an off day yesterday and has had a tough year, probably tired, lot of miles on the clock over the last couple of years with club and county, but to have that free taker ledge, like, and I suppose we probably have to then bring Sam Mulroy into the talk, because obviously he's so pivotal and so important for Louth. Wasn't unbelievably spectacular from play from Louth, but from dead balls ledge, he was probably the best dead ball kicker in the country this year.
Oh, totally. Like, and look, you look at how Dean Rock managed to keep himself in that Dublin team. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just you're 90% free taker the majority of the time. Like, it's pivotal. And look, yesterday was interesting actually because you had two free takers who weren't exactly flying. Like, I mean, Conor Turbert missed an easy one as well in the first half that you were like, Jesus, but there wasn't a whole pile of frees outside of Walsh's couple. I wonder Finnerty going off. Finnerty hit the first one, interestingly, that he got fouled for himself. I wonder did him going off, did that kind of upset the apple cart with free taking? But listen, it's crucial. I mean, I don't want to say if you did nothing else other than hit the frees, but genuinely, if you could guarantee yourself, if you could guarantee your team 7, 8, 9 frees a game, hitting that 80% kind of number. I mean, because the game is so robust and because there's so many numbers, threes are nearly your best hope of scoring these days with 15 behind the ball. You draw a foul, it's probably your best hope. And on the other side of that, if a team who is playing with that many numbers back recognises, well, actually, lads, these boys don't have a free taker from Anton outside 30 metres, well, that allows that contact line to be much heavier,
Yeah. Have you still the video of yourself scoring that free from under the stand from 60 meters? Have you still send that to people?
That's why I got cut off there. I was just watching it back. I was getting a bit nostalgic.
He wasn't a bad striker of the ball, Ryan. He wasn't a bad striker of the ball. Lads, Young Football of the Year, I think obviously Oisin Connolly, I think, is going to pick that up, I would say. Young Football of the Year. Who's your candidate then for Footballer of the Year? You're a big McCambridge fan, Ryan. Do you think he's in that reckoning?
I think he is, Stephen. Dylan McHugh probably was the obvious one. Now, Dylan had a poor enough final by his standards.
There was no real standout performers in the final. That's the thing, you see. There was no real standout. Before I thought Ben Creeley had a great final. I really did. I thought he had a great final. Like, I thought Paddy Burns had a really good final as well. I think he had a decent season. John Maher in the talk for Football of the Year, lads. Do you think?
He's had a really good season. That's funny why he is underrated for some reason, and I don't know why. And similarly with Keane Darcy, Keane Darcy had a phenomenal final yesterday. I think if Galway won, he'd have gone very close to man of the match. I tell you who I think has been sensational, and from the league right through has been Aidan Forker. I mean, he's just so solid, and like he's always
a proper warrior, isn't he?
He's a proper warrior. Like going back man mark and Comer, getting up and kicking a point. Like he's got a little bit of everything about him. I'd love if he was my captain. Like he's a proper battler.
Met him a few weeks ago, actually, the day before the Kerry game. They were in the pool. They were doing a recovery session. They'd done a bit of a primer session over in Drummatee Club, and they were in the ice tank or whatever, the what do you call the hydrotherapy bath or whatever, just getting a bit of a rehab session in or whatever, or getting a recovery session before they get on the bus to go to the hotel. Like, and sure, the professionalism of too, like, just the dedication and stuff too. But he soldiered for a long time, and I remember actually having a conversation with him, lads. You talk about that day in Cross McLean. I stood in a conversation with him that day, actually 2017, and I says, "What did you think of us?" And he says, "Look," he says, you're doing a lot of side. This is the exact words he said. You're doing a lot of sideline coaching. He says, you're doing a lot of sideline coaching. He says, we're trying to get to the stage where, we want to get away from the sideline coaching and it's on field management, player empowerment. And it's mad. Like, that was 7 years ago. Like, and they probably are there now. They probably are there now where they've had so many of those games where we were giving off about Armagh's game management, about how they were fucking games up towards the end. They were sloppy, and it's interesting you hear that comment from him 7 years ago. And I remember those words, like, and he would have been 28, 29 at that stage, like, and he was talking about, intelligent guy too as well as Falker, like, and a good leader, a good captain. But look, he's down in Folklore now as a man who lifted Sam Maguire.
Stevie, you said you joined the gym, did you, in Carrickdale?
I'm flying by. I'm absolutely flying by.
You seem to spend all your time in the pool and in the sauna. What's the story? You're sort of meeting all these
boys.
You don't meet in the weights
listen,
room.
No, I don't brag about it. Like, I don't brag about the weights I'm doing. So yeah.
You don't need to go into the recovery suite after you've done something.
No, I'll tell you what it is. I tell you what I do, lads. Right? I do the triathlon. It's called the steam sauna plunge. That's the triathlon. That's the triathlon. But here, lads, listen, it's been brilliant. It's been brilliant having you again. And thanks a million for the insights. And and you know, we'll get chatting again. And you know, thank you for everything this year, lads. And I'm sure the coaches in DSS have enjoyed the pods as well. But look, well done to Armagh. Well done to all the winners. Actually, I think it was a clean sweep for Ulster this year, lads. I don't know if you've seen it. Division 1, Division 2, Towson winners.
You've
You
kept that
know,
quiet. Hadn't heard about that at all.
we just need a hurling team now to win the All Ireland. That'll be the country in meltdown. But listen, lads, thanks a million, and we'll chat soon, boys. Well done.
There, dads.
Thanks,
See you
lad.
later.
Thanks.